All systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of Leverage Lane, PGA edition here on the Ship It Nation YouTube station. It is the final PGA edition we'll be doing this season. Of course, we do have the Tour Championship next week, but we won't have a Leverage Lane for that. We've got some other stuff that we're going to tease and push here in a minute, but I got my man, Alex Blickle, here with me as always, blickanalytics.com. Going to break it all down for you and more for the BMW. It's a Millie Maker week. I know you got a ticket. I got a ticket. We got a ticket to the big show. So this is going to be a fun one, man. How you doing, my friend?
Yeah, it's been a long time coming to get that ticket this year. Finally got it. It's back to back top 1% finishes in showdowns the last couple of weeks. So it's been a lot of fun. Props are on fire, and yeah, I just can't wait for the NFL season. As you saw, like I put the NFL roster construction data into the Discord yesterday. That was my task while waiting for my car to be serviced. Got it all done while I was there at the dealership. So yeah, it was a fun, productive day. And I mean, I'm just like, this is such an exciting time of the year, and both for golf and of course for NFL right around the corner.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome, man. We, of course, will be back. For those that don't know, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Make sure you hit the thumbs up while you're here. If you're on mobile live, just push the chat screen down, hit the thumbs up there for us. Takes 2 seconds, but we will be back for NFL. Last year, we didn't start. I think it was week 3. I want to say maybe week 4 even, but this year we'll have the entire season that we'll be covering just like this. And we don't put the show out 5 days early just to get a million clicks and links and all this other stuff and people spreading the word. We're trying to make sure we get you guys the most actionable advice for your DFS lineups and for your betting and all of that and more. So we'll have more on that to come. Just a heads up. I mean, lots of good people here in the chat. Go Collect says we'll have to catch a replay. Didn't know we still had it. Yeah, we got you covered right through, like we said, till the end. This is interesting, going to be a topic. Obviously, we will get to the chalk build, how to leverage the chalk build, and we'll see if this is a common thought. I actually think Scottie, who's another interesting topic, could steam a little more than we think, because I don't think Rory gets much ownership at all. Everyone, there's no way Rory could play good. He said he didn't play very much, very often. You know, he's only played his whole life, though. He's only one of the best golfers of all time, but there's no way he could play good this week. So Wins a Lot says, let's have a week. Lots of good people in there. I can't bring them all. I like this one, though. Seymour Putts, which is a great username. It's like a fantasy football, golf fantasy username, Seymour Putts. But may your screens be green really isn't noteworthy until coming down the stretch on a Sunday, but people are dreamers. I was a dreamer on Sunday, my friend, and my man Sung Jae Im made a bogey on 18. That cost me $10,000, dropping from first to second in the 254 mags. And then I was like, oh, Sam Burns, you had yourself a day. Scottie wiped the floor with you. That's great. He's your good buddy. At least make a par, right? We'll hang on to this 10K. Nope. We'll make a bogey too, he says. And that dropped me another 5,000. So 15K drop on the final 2 holes, as some people were congratulating me, which is not how you should do that in this game. Right. When there's position placement points and all these other things that matter. But you don't control it. I don't believe in like mushes or jinxes. Everybody knows that. I'm just saying it's more of a testament to you seeing that it's never over till it's actually over, unless you are blowing the field away, or as our guy Degenerate 75 likes to say, or like to say, boat race the field. And I should note that quickly, and I'll let you rebuttal that. But just the big guy event quickly, it's time's up. I mean, you can get in still, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying, like, if you're not already booked for Vegas or living there, you're probably not going, and I get that. But do want to say thank you to everybody that supported. Excited to see all those coming out. It looks like we'll have a pretty good crowd of friends, close family, things like that James is going to have at the event. So a lot of the Ship It Nation crew, a bunch of good people from around the DFS space. But that is Friday, August 21st. If you're in Las Vegas, we will be at the D Casino and Hotel. We will be on the 12th floor at the Detroit Ballroom, and you can come on down. If you're not sure, you're like, oh, I didn't know about it, whatever, but I'm in Vegas, I want to check this out. Hit me up on X at ToeTagginTambo. Alex, I'll let the rebuttal go back to you on the other stuff. I was just saying, like, it's never over till it's over, right? In these tournaments, as far as Seymour made a good point there.
Yeah, I mean, I was right there with you. I had I needed Knapp to par the last hole to get second in the 250 on Sunday and win 2 tickets. He made bogey, so I fell to third. Cost me, I think, $2,000 there, and I lost one of the 2 tickets that I I was in first 4 at the moment. So still got the ticket for this week. And hopefully, it's funny, like the last 2 years, I've had so many chances with so many tickets, and I got the 5th place finish in week 1 last year for 50 grand. But other than that, it felt like a lot of missed opportunities. And it's just like, how funny would it be if the one ticket that I win this year in PGA is the one that really, it gets the big prize. So we'll see what happens this week. And I feel pretty good because I know, the data is all working. The contest sims right now are fully fired up and super powerful. So I feel really, really good about the process. We talked a lot on Mastermind episode last week, and like just kind of finding the right balance between all this new stuff that I've been able to do. And I feel like we're kind of in the zone now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's going to be a big season ahead. I will actually make sure to show that off quickly now that you mentioned it real fast there, and get Seymour. We appreciate you, but I'm going to get you off the screen there. But I just want to bring this up. I think we have it here. I'm just going to press play on it, and then that'll get it on the screen. But if you guys want to go check it out, DFS Mastermind, if you go to this YouTube channel under the video section, you'll find this video, how my DFS process changed in 2026. Lots of comments. Lots of people seem to love what we're doing there. So if you want to check that out, that's a good starting point. We've got more. Like I said, there's a teaser that we'll be doing a little bit of a side project upcoming that you guys may like, but we'll have more on how to get into that and how to find out about that as we go along. Let's see what else. Knapp unfortunately never got those 8 birdies. No, he did that at 3M. I watched him live do that, and that was great for the showdown on Sunday when I didn't have him there. But this one was a little bit different. So Newland says, "Oh man, Alex, you sit at the dealership. I don't have patience to do so. They have a nice waiting room. I just did this a couple weeks ago. Actually, it's not the worst sometimes.
As long as I have work to do, I'll just sit there and do the work."
Yeah, and this is a good point by Ryan. Sad times from the PGA streets going away. Comes with greatness, NFL season. But I'll say, like Alex said, there's nothing better. There's lots of money to be won this week, by the way, not just the 44 mega that you got to pretty much win your way into to play, but the tournaments are good. The contests are nice as usual to make it from that front. So I would say nothing better than going into the NFL season of greatness with some money greatness on the way out from the PGA street. So definitely excited for that. Shout out to Gary and lots of others, but let's get into it. What is your thoughts?
Well, one last thing there, including the fact that like there are a ton of satellites for week 1 in the lobby. So if, even if you feel like, oh man, like this has been a really rough, PGA season and I'm kind of glad it's coming to an end and I just want NFL to start, like, okay, then play really hard this week and next week, 'cause you can win some great tickets and start week 1 off with a bang, just like I did last year.
Yeah, good call out, actually, because if you're not in the 44 this week, you can still get into the one that's coming up in just a few weeks now for NFL. And like I said, Alex and I will be back. We'll have more on that and what's to come. And we might even do some preview stuff. We'll let you guys know, though. We'll be out here making sure you guys are taken care of. Dollar Bill, my man over at Chip It Nation, I'll see him in Vegas this weekend, says not to mention 10 days until CFB. So if you're playing in the college football streets and you're eligible to do so, lots of good stuff going on over at Chip It Nation with that. Bill heads up that program. We got Kenny Hamhock is fully locked down for this year. He's a great dude. I had him over on Mastermind doing his interview. He's won the Millie Maker, done well in a bunch of different niche sports, but he absolutely crushes college football too. He maxed out the live final last year and then won it. So congrats to him for that. But lots of good stuff going on. Where do you want to start for this week with the course fit, the weather, anything you want to comment on from that perspective first? I think obviously people know it's a smaller field. No, people are grinding. I love these posts and I get it. Like, somebody posted all 50 golfers and what they need to do to get to East Lake. Like, that is actually an interesting post. I'm not shitting on it. I'm just saying it's like, yeah, they all got to play really good. And that's the thing about like, people always talk about it. And we've done a bunch in the past, like motivation. They all have motivation right now. They're all going to play. They all want to get through. There is massive rewards for their careers of getting through to the final 30 with the 2-year exemption, all the majors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I know a lot of the, well, most of them already have that. Yeah, they want to stack it. They want to get in there. They want to make that happen. So any thoughts on that? And then anything with the course fit you want to bring up, probably focus more on that.
Well, so one of the things that I did, because if you remember, like I say it all the time, motivation is not predictive of success. But one thing I did do for round 4 last week was kind of note the guys who were really on the bubble and note the fact that, okay, that is creating an added layer of pressure. And so we actually used our contention performance score to kind of look at, okay, well, which players might do well because they're on the bubble and which might struggle. And so like the 2 kind of auto fades for me, in round 4 were Keith Mitchell and Brian Harman. And Harman ended up like 42% in the 250 and was atrocious. And so like that was the key fade of the slate. The guy that analysis got me onto, someone who was just outside of the bubble and had a really good contention performance score, was Max Homa. And so he at 6,100 shot 2 under and was like 8% owned or something like that. He was probably the key to my lineup. So I was really pleased with that. And I'll probably look at contention performance score again this week for the entire week for those bubble guys, who really have to play well to get into the Tour Championship. And maybe it's a reason to fade some of the guys who are like 28th or 32nd on the list and obviously have to play well. And maybe if their contention performance score is really bad, maybe that means that they're not going to handle that added layer of pressure well. But with all that said, as always, I think course fit and just generally like who's good, who's not is the more important place to start. And so from a course fit perspective, we only have the PGA Championship from 2018 to work with. That week, it was very true that distance was predictive. We also, though, know that like PGA Championships, US Opens, they like setting up the golf courses in such a way that rewards distance. So how much of that was Bellerive itself versus just the PGA Championship, or the PGA of America, I should say, setting up the golf course in a way that would reward distance? I don't really know. So there's going to be a lot of uncertainty. What I have kind of coded up for this is like in the contest sim over at Blick Analytics, there's what we call like just course fit sensitivity and driving distance specifically sensitivity. So every time you sim a lineup, you can see like, oh, the lineup is plus 30% when distance is super predictive. It's negative 20% when distance is not super predictive. So just like really trying to capture and actually quantify that uncertainty is I think a really strong point of those sims. And I will probably be leaning into distance this week, but I'm also going to be looking for guys who like they can succeed regardless, because it's very clear around the industry. If you look at, who people around the industry are pointing at for DraftKings plays, and also just like the most tipped guys for outrights this week, bomber. So if we can find the guys who can play really well on bomber-friendly golf courses, even when they're not bombers, that can also be a key this week. And so one of the splits that I'm looking at this week is just performance above or below expectation on those bomber-friendly golf courses, on long par 70 golf courses. I know one of my subscribers asked, like, are you going to look at long iron play this week? And my answer was like, as I've talked about a bunch of this season here on Leverage Lane, I really haven't found a ton of predictive value in specific approach buckets. I know Red Kachik on Twitter has kind of made the same point over and over, which is just that like when you look at specific approach buckets, you're just kind of crashing the sample size in a way that isn't very good. With golf, like as we know, you kind of want the largest sample size possible most of the time, even when it becomes a little bit less specific to that week. And so that's not surprising. But theoretically, if there is some predictive value in it, that split will pick it up, right? If you're on a long par 70 golf course, obviously you're probably hitting more long irons than usual. So if that's a thing, you'll see it in that split.
Yeah, just looking at some of the stuff is pretty interesting too. Like, Matt McNeely is, 49th in the FedEx Cup stuff. Just going back to your previous point about that. And like, I don't know exactly what it is yet because I don't have it up in front of me, but can't imagine he's good in contention. When has he ever been good?
No, he's
contention? And then you think about like, I don't know, Ryan Fox, who's 25th, and you got to make top 30, and he's a major winner now. So it's like, again, talk about in contention. I mean, if I talk about, I have no clue how his rate's out. Again, you have these. I don't have them in front of me. I can get access, obviously, but just knowing it, my point would be, I've never seen somebody in such a high pressure contention. I know it's one event, but it was like that guy was hitting shots in 8 seconds. He was unleashing just like perfect shots down the stretch to win a major, walking up, no questions asked. So it's like him staying inside the top 30 doesn't mean it will happen. Just would feel better about that than McNeely somehow, getting there. And why would McNeely be 49th coming in? Well, probably because he hasn't been able to make his way to that. So it's like just a couple examples that I can think of just looking quickly at that. But that's why
you nailed it. McNeely has the worst contention performance score in the field. Fox's is really good. And if you recall that week, like Fox was the only one going into round 4 who was in contention and had a positive contention performance score. So it wasn't surprising to see him come out of there with the win. And yeah, I mean, you can kind of see that kind of across the board. The one guy who has a really good contention performance score was kind of on the bubble, who didn't play really well on Sunday, was Michael Brennan. But like, we've now seen him close out a win in his first PGA Tour start. And then the next time that he was like really, really in contention, he was flawless all day Sunday. So his contention performance scores kind of through the roof. A small sample, and honestly, like, it's probably overinflated at this point. It is the best in this field now, but at the same time, like, we haven't seen any reason to think otherwise for him. So I think that might be a little bit with him. Like, he's so dominant with the driver that anytime he's in contention, it means that the other parts of his game are also clicking that week. And so with him, it might just be, if I'm putting well and I'm hitting my irons well, like, I'm gaining such an advantage off the tee that how could I possibly make a mistake just because the pressure's there. So it'll be interesting to see how his contention performance score kind of progresses over the next year or two. But as of right now, like, he looks like a stone cold killer anytime he's in contention.
Yeah, he definitely looks very good out there. I always coined him as your boy, because that was like, we'd have different things. You talk about his distance and how much is off the tee and all of that with him. But like you said, when he's actually truly been in the contention spots, I know it's a very small sample, which I don't love, but you've been honest about why it is that way. So my point being, that is a good example there. And then I was going to say, there was one other thing you said on, maybe it was Fox. Yeah, Fox is why I remember. I think that's why I remembered Fox, not just the event, but I think it was that Sunday where it was like, man, this guy is a good option because of that. Mav McNeely, I didn't remember anything, just all the times that he did not close. So I was like, that's definitely Mav McNeely for you. Patrick Rogers would have a horrible contention score, but he has to get into contention these days first too.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know how bad it would be, because I can't remember the last time he was actually there in contention to get a.
But props to him for, always hanging around. People are always like, say, how do you stick around for 300 starts and still not have this? It's like, well, you still got to be good somehow. And shout out Zach Blair, 280 off the tee or whatever it is, and he's still in the mix. So you got to find those couple courses each year. Anything else, Alex, with the course fit that you want to talk about for this week specifically? I think you nailed it. I will say, I guess, what we do here is obviously break it down from like what we think the field's doing and how we can look at that and leverage it. And we'll get to that in a second with starting with the chalk build. But or maybe I'll bring that up too, but while I'm bringing it up, I would say that the ownership, at least from my perspective so far with the rough draft, looks to be skewing heavily towards bombers naturally. Like, it looks like if you go to like Woodland, Minwoo, Hogard, like you're seeing a lot of these guys pick up a little bit of steam there. But I'll bring up the rough draft so we can run through this and start looking at it. If you guys are over on Ship It Nation, this is the Stone 2.0. It is the rough draft, so the numbers aren't accurate. I have Rory lower than this. I actually think Scottie could get higher than this. We're going to have edits and updates before the evening, but it's not really about that. It's kind of just getting to the point of using the hand builder and saying, okay, what are people doing this week? How are you seeing it shake out right now from your perspective? You think more Scottie or less Scottie? Because one thing you've talked about all season, and this being the final show, people are just hitting us finally at the very end. Great, but the combinatorial ownership of, like you talk about, where if it's going to be a guy like Scottie who's getting that, then that is going to change the guys down below, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll let you go for it from there, and we'll discuss it more. But what are your thoughts here on the chalk build?
Yeah, when you click Scottie, you're left with 71.20 per lineup. So in a lot of the events so far this year, if you had to go to this range and find 5 guys in this range, you were clicking like guys who ended up, 140th in the FedEx Cup 5 times. That was a really, really uncomfortable build. Very few people went with it. And that's why for so much of the year, Scottie has come in lower owned than projections around the industry, and just kind of everyone kind of caught up to it. And it was the same sort of thing, right? It was like he'd be projected at 25% one week, he'd come in at 22. He'd be projected at 22 the next week, coming at 19, all the way down to the week where he was like under 5% at the Scottish. This is one of those weeks, though, as we've gotten in major championships and in a few signature events, where the quality of player around 7,100 now is really, really good. And so there is a collection of chalk down here, I think, where you're going to see Thor Bjornsson at 75, Brennan, Minwoo Lee, Scott, Sungjae, Noren, Ben Griffin, even some like Rose, Højgaard, Rayton, Alex Fitzpatrick. There are so many players down here now that people actually can choose from that I'm with you. I think we're going to see Scottie. I hadn't projected it 21% for single entry in my first run. I think that's low. I think it's probably 25 to 30% where we'll see him. As you said, like I think Rory could be 10% or less. I was like 7 percentage points below the second lowest in the industry last week on Rory, and ended up, I think, like
Too high.
still up half a percentage point too high on him. I
Yeah.
think I was at like 10.9. He was 10.4. So yeah, right now I have him at 9.4, and maybe that's even too high. I don't know, but yeah, I'm very much with you. I think we'll see Scottie, and then down to like the Burns through Siwoo group, and then some of the upper 8Ks as well, and then kind of a jump down to the lower 7s and upper 6s from there.
Yeah, and I will say this. I mean, we'll definitely have a lane at the end that we roll with, and it's different. Like, again, you're playing a milli ticket, I'm playing a milli ticket. It's not about that as much as like it's a 50-man field. There's only so much you can do, and there's definitely things that we're going to attack, like, different angles, approaches, course fits, whatever we go with. But I will say, when somebody brought this up earlier, best leverage is playing all 6K golfers. Like, I think all these, most of the lineups will have 6K guys. But if you're saying like, you could play 3 6K guys and get different that way and do something different, possibly. But I think my takeaway would be like, just again, it's not my lane, just noting it is like, if you're doing that, it's like you're trying to skip over Minwoo, Thor, Kitayama, whoever else Brennan, whoever else you think gets picked there. But then most people would use it to jam Scottie. So you might want to go with something different that way. It's not my thought. I'm just saying that's a way that, at least if you're talking that language, I think that's how you'd be applying that, as opposed to saying like, oh, I'm just not going to play 7K guys. I'll play 6K guys. I built a lineup last night on King of the Draft for the tournament that Spencer put on with everybody in the setup there that had no 6K guys. And I kind of liked it. It was like 2 9s, 2 8s, 2 7s. So, it just depends what you're looking for and what you see. Alex, if we don't go the Scottie route, I found a couple different random versions. I'm not playing any of these, by the way, so you guys can play if you want, but they're all massively overowned and they're like 400 points. But what is the non-Scottie? Like, I see Ludwig. I'm sure you're seeing him pop. I don't know what you see him for ownership and your GPP scores and things like that, but I think Ludwig is at 9,700 going to be popular. I guess you still kind of got to click in with some of these values. Like, is it Minwoo? I don't know who people are going to exactly here in the 8s, but I guess like how do you see this lineup shaking out? Is it like a Gotterup, Hovland, Kitayama, something like, or how do you see this one playing out? Or maybe it's like with Knapp and then you get Scott. So this one's 466 and over 100% owned. But
yeah, I think it definitely could be something like this. I also wouldn't be shocked if we saw. So basically, like what this one's doing is it's pulling, what is it, just one of the low 7s, upper 6s, or no, 2, because Adam Scott, man, like it's funny. You hear the names in this lineup. Like, if imagine you hadn't seen pricing yet, and someone said, "I've got a lineup of Oberg, Minwoo Lee, Chris Gotterup, Victor Hovland, Jake Knapp, Adam Scott. What is the cheapest any of those players are in this lineup?" I think you'd guess like 7,600, 7,700, something like that. Yeah. And there are actually 2 at 7,200 or below in this lineup. So I think that kind of gives you an indication just of how easy it's going to be to fit either of these builds, where you either want to load up on the 9K range or you want to go get Scottie. So I think that this is probably correct. I also wouldn't be shocked if we did see a couple lineups that actually even started lower than Oberg, and it was like, you start
even higher, 469.
Yeah, or like, starting Siwoo, Gotterup, Hovland, Clark, or something like that. Clark is somebody who I think is going to end up a lot higher owned than what I currently have. So, as we talked about earlier, like if you look at the most tipped players in the industry, it's Bomber, 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 and I think Wyndham was the most tipped of all. So I definitely think that he's going to steam quite a bit. Also, just someone who's been awesome over the last few months and just showed last week that, maybe he's back in form. Ball striking's been really good. Obviously, the putter came back to life last week. So yeah, I mean, like, it's the other thing here is there are only 50 players, right? So it's going to be extremely difficult to get different on structure alone, because the whole like kind of concept of deviating from structure is that there are so many players that there are naturally these pockets that just get overlooked and just don't fit a ton of builds. But you're not really going to find that when there are only 50 players to choose from. Like, everyone's going to get at least some attention, and every range is going to get some amount of attention. Like, I think the pocket that is the most likely to fit this bill of like, hey, this is just a range of players that gets overlooked because most builds don't go to them, would be Henley at 84 through Spawn at 76. So like 7,600 to 8,400. But even within that group, like there are 4 guys that I have projected for at least 10% and could be 15% or more with JT, Knapp, Kitayama, Gerard. Like, none of those guys steaming would surprise me. And Tom Kim has been a really popular play of late. I think the fact that his ownership is as low as it is right now is reflective of the fact that people want bombers this week. And obviously he's not a bomber, but it also wouldn't surprise me if Tom Kim is like one of the few short hitters who does end up being 13%, 15%, something like that. So I do think this is another week like last week, like a couple, actually, like maybe even a string of events lately have been where we can't really get different from a composition point of view. We have to get different through just who we're playing or the construction angle that you take, where it's like maybe we go all in on an early stack or all in on a bomber stack. Or I think like one of my favorite builds this week might end up being, I want to find like 6 guys who all are protected from an ownership perspective because they're not long off the tee, but they project well. They're just really good players. So like maybe it starts Siwoo, Henley, Tom Kim, or something like that, and finish the lineup that way, where even if they're all 10 to 15%, like very, very few people are building an entire lineup without bombers. So you'd be really, really different from a construction perspective in that way.
Yeah. I mean, this is, again, if you look at this, and again, these are all preliminaries, but like Russell Henley, 72, Jake Knapp, 76. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I like Knapp here. I'm just noting it. Like you could get to Henley. It's median points anyway. I'm just noting it. You look at Morikawa, 76. Oh, but I got to play Goddard Upper Hovland. Do you? Like they're 2 to 3 points higher. That's that. Siwoo, you talked about. I mean, these projections are probably light too, but I'm just noting with the rough draft. But in general, because of, Siwoo net right today versus what about just a month ago? Every time Siwoo was on paper, it was like, how is he this cheap? Like he's got ball striking numbers like Scottie this season. He's Scottie's buddy. Like everything's been about Siwoo. Now it's not. Like you said, still a really good player. Now, what if you do that and start with Siwoo? Well, I'm not filling it out because it's not my lineup. I'm just noting it, but it's like a Siwoo. All these guys, people are talking about them, but they're not going to be about them. All these probably actually come in sub these 3 right here. 2 of them already are on rough draft, probably sub 10, maybe right there. Siwoo, you never know. He's like a hit or miss because then people get onto him late. He's 91. Like people don't love Decky this week because, withdrawal risk. And I think he's actually withdrew from this tournament a couple times, which people factor that in, but no Shota on the bag and all these different factors people are bringing up that I hear from narratives. We're not narrative street, we're leverage lane, but just noting it, talking to your point. Well, what did you just say to us? You said JJ Spawn up to Henley, kind of going overlooked. Oh, you can fill out the last 2 guys in your lineup with 2 guys directly from that range. So it's just an example, but it's just explaining again of like, that's where you're making a decision that's fueled on, okay, but these are all still really good golfers. This is like the best of the best already. So it's when you get, we were just at it, the Fantasy Golf World Championship, 50 finalists that get in. Yeah, it's going to come down to some variance because guess how they got there? They're typically the better players and the best in the world at this game. You didn't just get in, by the way. That was the part where people could get a little bit lucky and have variance fall in their favor. But then you got to go 200 to 100 and 100 to 50. Once you get there, it's like, yeah, these are the favorites, but these guys are also really good. And those guys are just as good. And they've won, anybody can do it. So I like your thought process here, and it may come up again later a little bit, but I'll let you get to some more stuff here. When we talk about leveraging it, you did hit on a couple key points there. One, I think, is, again, it's not just about the bomber narrative. This is kind of any week. You've done this actually really well too, where there's weeks where there's a quote unquote wave advantage. And it's like, yeah, but it's like a one stroke. Like I'll take it. And I would put some lineups towards that if I was playing a portfolio, but for my single entry, I really don't see it being enough that's going to knock all of my guys out from making the cut. And there is so many good options that I love. 4 of them are falling into the AM. Everyone's on the PM. because it's a perceived edge and I already like 4 a lot from the other side. I'm just going to commit to that, put 2 more in, finish it out, compare some 2v2s. It makes your life kind of easy at that point. I got 4 I love. They're on the opposite side. I'm getting an ownership break based on that. Now my 2v2 becomes which 2 fall from that side. And guess what becomes easier then? Tiebreakers. Because you're like, well, I love this 2v2, but it's a 5-1. I'm pretty committed to this now. I'm going to go with the next best thing to that person. Boom, your 2v2 closes out. And people are like, how the hell did you get to that? There was a process. We just walked through how you got to it. But so many people don't see it that way. Is there any other thoughts around leveraging those chalk builds we just talked about that you could see? And then what are the common themes that you're pulling from it that we just went through?
Yeah, I think that's kind of it. So one thing I'll say here, and I'm going to reiterate this in my leverage lane later, but this is a really hard week for ownership because it's like when the field is compacted to only 50 players, it makes it abundantly clear to everyone playing DFS that you've got to try a little bit harder to be contrarian than usual. Like, in a major championship field, most of the time someone could say, I don't care about ownership. I'm going to play my 6 favorite players. And somewhere in that lineup, they're going to stumble into a potential separator. So there's not that much of an effort from the field of saying, how can I be unpredictable this week? This is a week where so much of the field is saying, how can I be unpredictable? How can I do something that people aren't expecting me to do? Whether that's taking a risk and playing Rory this week when everyone else thinks that, he's not ready and he's just going to struggle his way through again, trying to get his game ready for next week. But even then, who knows if he'll be ready to really ball out then. Or it's, taking the route that we just talked about where it's, okay, well, what if I don't play bombers? What if I go with an accuracy stack instead? All of this is to say, like, one of the things that I think is worth doing, and one of the ways that we can kind of leverage the field this week, is just look for opportunities where we know there's ownership protection. And I think the main one that I have so far is just the idea of kind of steering clear of bomber-centric lineups, or going all in and saying, I'm not going to play a single guy in my lineup who isn't a bomber. And that way, it's similar to the idea of wave stacking when you go 6-0, right? It's like, if you're going to lean into the distance narrative, you should lean into it more than anybody else does. You should make it such that, like, what if this field or what if this course plays like the Houston Open, where it's like, it's almost a prerequisite that you need a ball speed of 185 plus to have a great chance of contending. And if you're leaning into that and you have 5 bombers, you don't want your last pick to be Siwoo Kim instead of Chris Gotterup. It just doesn't make sense, right? And so I would say, like, you either want to really, really make sure that you're going in on it, or kind of just steer clear of it altogether. I think that's probably a better approach than having a lineup where you've got like 3 bombers and 3 straight guys, or 4 bombers and 2 just like kind of long, but they're more accurate than they are long, things like that. And so I would say that's probably the number one thing that I think is worth keeping in mind this week. But again, it's just a hard week to get ownership right. And so that's going to be kind of the focal point of my leverage lane.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more. Like I said, it's obviously a smaller field. People talk about that. I think there's some other good questions that came up that I want to answer as well. I know Oracle brought this up about FanDuel. It's only one guy. They have the range, but I'm saying one guy at 6K flat. And again, you got to look at how you're using it. And also just remember, it's fine to use it, but think about what everybody else that's using it is doing. The minute you put one of those 6K guys in, most are going to go to Scottie, Ludwig, whatever the chalk is over on FanDuel. So I'm just saying that's going to be a common thing, but they're trying to get different, which I'm happy. I want that innovation. I know they've got the NFL week 1 $5 milli maker where, there is a 1 week delay on it. So if you're not normally playing $750 a week, don't do it, because you just have to play through it all the next week. But at the end of the day, you can put the $750 in. Every dollar you lose, you'll get back, and then you can play it again the next week. So I think that's kind of interesting as well. Somebody asked her, it's Gary. Shout out to Gary. He said, with only 50 guys, you've talked about this plenty in the past. I want to ask you, does any of this change? And then I got to follow up on something else, but does any of this change for you about leaving money on this week? 100 to 500 to me is still fine because it's whatever, but I'm not going over the top to be like, let me leave out Ludwig and play Wyndham Clark
Yeah.
and leave the 1,000. Like, it is what it is. Those guys are both capable, but just like my point I'm going to make in a minute, you're trying to pinpoint too much when you do that. It's like, could you be correct on the one decision? Possibly. Yeah. Wyndham could beat Ludwig this week, but you're acting as though it's a matchup bet. It is not.
Yeah.
You're putting together a 6-person lineup that still needs to come through. So what are those other moves that you didn't make or that you left that did that? So that's why I don't mess with that too much. Looks like you're shaking your head. No, what's your thoughts?
Yeah. Do you want me to go through like the long answer again, or should we opt for the TLDR version?
TLDR is good for this show, I think, because, again, it's been talked about. We've mentioned it. Again, we're against it, so we don't need to really go into it any further, but I think you should just go to your TLDR, and then I've got another point I don't want to forget. Yeah,
the TLDR version is essentially just when you leave a lot of money on the table, let's say it's $500, as you kind of just stated, like if you're leaving $500 or if you're leaving $600 when you have Siwoo Kim in the lineup and no Oberg, you are asking Siwoo to now also beat Fitzpatrick, Cam Young, Ludwig Oberg, when if you had Siwoo and no money left on the table, he only has to beat the guys below him. So you're asking him to beat more guys. But that's also true of all 6 players in your lineup. Every single one of the guys in your lineup, when you're leaving 600 on the table, you're now also asking him to beat everybody who's above him by less than $600 or less than $700. So you're just asking so much more of your players. And the consequence of that is lineups that leave that much money on the table don't do as well. And I think I'll opt for like a hybrid answer here. The latter part to that is, imagine yourself on Sunday. You've got a sweat. You've got obviously we only have 6 guys in our lineup. 3 of them are like, you got to have this guy. They're all 8,000 or below. They're all contending for the win. They've been making a bunch of birdies. Like, that 3 is correct. And so now everyone that you're trying to beat, everyone you're dueling with to get into the top 1% and to get the actual takedown, it's about how well your other 3v3 does. And that other 3v3 is going to have infinitely more possible opponents if you left $600 on the table than if you didn't. And that to me is like the nail in the coffin against leaving money on the table. You want to be up against as few possible combinations of players as possible when you've got the right 3 and you're just, sometimes it's the right 4 and it's 2v2. And now if you left no money on the table, it's like you could be beat by 6 possible combinations of players. And if you left 600 on the table, it's not 6 possible combos. It's like 140 something or something like that, right? Like it's crazy how quickly it stacks up against you with like every additional $100 that you leave on the table in that way.
The combinations are important. It's a good segue because that's the second part I was going to lead to your previous point you'd made about like if you're going 5 bomb. People say this week, well, wait a second, Tambo, Alex, you guys just said 6 bombers are going to be a popular build. Why wouldn't a 5-1 be in my favor if I did that? Like if I went 5 bombers, then what, are you going to pick the random needle in the haystack? Like you just got it right with Noren? What if you went to, like you said, somebody else like a Henley, and it ended up being the guy down low you needed? Like there's so many flips in that build that you're saying you're going to pinpoint the one. And what if it is just like you said, almost like a Houston Open, a prerequisite, you need that 185 plus ball speed. Well, then you want it just to have it. And you can get different in other ways, whether it's $100 or $200 on the table, a lower owned option separator, a different type of construction, not just who you're playing, but who you're not playing. If you're leaving, 5 of the top 6 owned guys out of your build and going with the secondary bomber pool, like there's so many other ways to do it than trying to be that hero with the crystal ball and saying, I got the glass ball here that tells me it's this one-off that I need this week. That's really tricky to thread the needle on.
I think a really important point there is understanding how most people build lineups and how that's different from like the way that we are talking about building lineups, where we're saying it makes sense to make your like first decision. I want to build a bomber stack. And then you go find your 6 bombers that fit the lineup. The way most people build lineups, even in a week like this, even when they think or know that distance is really important, they're not starting with the decision of the type of player that they want. They're going player by player. They're finding players that they like. And so they might go through the list and they might say like, ooh, Alex Noren was awesome last week. He's been great 3 weeks in a row. I'll play him this week. oh, Kitayama, he fits the bomber narrative this week. Jake Knapp, he fits the bomber narrative this week, right? And then they go up and they say, oh man, Hideki's been awesome for weeks in a row. I'll play him, right? So they're finding reasons to play players, and distance is one of those main reasons that they're finding for why they should use somebody. But they're not going to land on a 6-0 very often because they're not starting with that decision to actually build a lineup full of 6 bombers, and they're not automatically excluding people who aren't bombers. They're just looking for, they're just using distance as a reason to be excited about a potential click. And that's why we consistently see that whether it's an early stack, whether it's a bomber stack, or, sometimes it's an accuracy stack, we very rarely see 6-0 because people are building player out instead of lineup in the way that we kind of talk about it.
Yeah, 100%, man. That's the thing. And I don't think, like you said, not enough people focus on that. We've talked about a ton. If you go to this very YouTube channel under videos, look at the latest video from 9 days ago. We did record a new tools, new models, new edge process video, breaking it all down. We do have more of a collaboration upcoming that will be just sort of a first come, first serve special edition. There'll be a wait list for that we'll talk about with people and put it out there. Just further elaborating to Nick's question, we absolutely do have a show together. We do this show during NFL. We haven't got the date and time down yet, but I think last year we did it on Saturdays, I want to say, and we had like the latest information. I can't remember. What day did we do?
I honestly don't even remember. It might have been Fridays, but yeah, I think Saturday is probably ideal. We'll talk about that. We'll figure it out.
It's probably going to be Saturday. We'll see, but we don't take weekends off, especially not in this spot. And with what's on the line, we're playing, like we said, we're both in the 44 mega this week. I know a lot of shows out there, people are doing a lot of talking, not a lot of walking. And that's a problem sometimes for people. So to each their own, whatever people like, but we definitely play in the streets and have success doing so. So we're trying to bring that to both our major sports, which are PGA and NFL. Marquee Sports, I want to address this one quickly just because Hoop is not going anywhere. Hoop is definitely back. He never left. And for NFL, he was there 100% of the time, and he'll be right back in his chair for that. I think people were thinking like, oh, we haven't seen him for PGA. We've got Blickle. We've got Matt Gannon, who's been doing boots on the ground. Before that, rest in peace to the big guy going to the big guy event. This week, we had DGen. So it was always set up where like Hoop was doing mostly NFL and then filling in as needed. And then, of course, running the business on the back end, but Hoop will definitely be. We've got the regular show for the classic slate. Excited. Him, Title, and myself will be back, the 3-man booth. And then we got the Monday night and Thursday night football, plus all the island games, the Thanksgivings and all that. So you won't be missing out. I will say this, just a timeout for a quick 2-second marketing because the topic just came up. If you're a member at Ship It Nation, next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, it's a members only live stream, our first ever Nation communication. We're going to introduce Ben, the new CEO. We're going to break down all the new offerings and everything that you guys can look at and take advantage of. And if you're a member, you won't want to miss out. If you get in before then with any of the promos right now, you'll be a member, so you can take advantage. But it is going to be for members only, from founding family, big guys, right up to everybody on the SaberSim packages. If you're not a member and you're waiting for the promos and the surprises, and we've been awfully quiet this year, but we got something very big coming. It'll be next Thursday, I believe. It's not set in stone yet, but I think it'll be the 27th of August. You'll want to stay tuned. But if you're a member, Tuesday, August 25th, 2 p.m. Eastern, it'll be posted in the announcements channel, and there'll be a special link there for that. I just want to know, Golf Profit, you might have came in late, no problem, but this is just so you see, we'll definitely stand by our numbers. I know between Alex at his site and our site and professionals like Sheets and guys going over it for months on end now, the members in the chat can tell you there's very accurate ownership but between both of our sites, and we'll see how that works in the future as well. But this is a rough draft. I agree with you. Hideki definitely won't be 15, nor will I don't think Rory will come anywhere near 17, but we make those adjustments. We do 2 more adjustments to the ownership before we put this out final.
The thing with the Hideki comment is I don't know if he's saying he's going to be more owned than that or less owned than that, which makes me think it's a pretty good ownership projection. And I've got him like right at 15% as well. So
I think he'll come in less, and I know you'll be making a job again, obviously very accurate ownership projections. You do this for a living. So that's your setup there, but I'm not really trying to like argue it. I'm just saying, we want people to be aware we're working with Rough Draft. Obviously all the final stuff will be at both our applicable sites. You can go to shipitnation.com Wednesday night after 5 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Eastern, depending on time zones and slates and everything like that, where they're playing, and get the final draft. And it's been very accurate. Alex's stuff is the same. And I don't think he's a withdrawal risk. I think people think he is, or want to push this into their mind that he could, because of this, tournament and, him already being in the top, like all the different factors about Hideki. People always think stuff, bad about him. The truth of it is he's probably helped people at low ownership more than he's hurt people at high ownership, because even those weeks he WD'd, it's not always. I know what you'll remember. Yep. It's like when your aces got beat by kings, you'll definitely remember that in a hand, but you don't remember all the time your threes sucked out on aces with a set on the flop. And it's like, oh, I crushed them, but that's what I'm supposed to do. I played good or whatever. People don't think about that. Hideki's usually not super high owned or anything like that as well. Scooter, I think, is asking about the teaser that we're talking about. It will not be leverage lane related. It will not be something publicly put out there. Like we just did the free show to show you like the very scrape of the surface. This is something we've been working on behind the scenes that we're excited to put out for you guys. And I think the feedback and the excitement around wanting something like this between DFS Mastermind and Blick Analytics and everybody in the background at Ship It Nation as well that's asking for more content, this is something they'll be looking for. So again, when we put the announcement out, make sure to get on that wait list and be ready for that.
Yeah, just real quick on that. It's something that like we've been asked about very specifically if we could do something like it. And so, yeah, the answer is yes, we can.
That's a great point, because that's, one of our focuses and where leverage lane was originally adapted from was people saying that all the content is the same. And all people always talk about MME and portfolios and all that. Okay, well, let's talk about leverage lane and how you might leverage, when you're only playing 1 to 5 lineups. And then I add the feature of like, okay, what if you were extrapolating on that and building it out and expanding? Okay, we can do that too. But in general, even when we talk about our leverage lane at the end, we're talking about, for me, it's like the $200 single entry with 50K up top and how I'm attacking that field. So, and also said, talking about Blicklytics. I think there's a bunch of different ones. The Blick scored I like. It's, Blick Analytics is the site. You can go check it out, blickanalytics.com. But yeah, it's way more of like, you could talk about it better, but I would say like the data, the tools, the add-on, it's not just projections and ownership. It's like how you can take the data. The roster construction stuff is amazing, like all of that. And the video has the promo code in. If you guys want to use promo code Tambo in conjunction with the Ship It Nation and everything affiliate agreement, you can go check it out and get 20% off your first month. So definitely go do that. But you can talk about it more if you want, Alex, right now. And then we'll get back to how we can go to the betting segment, one and done topic, and get out of here.
Let's just go to one and done, because I'm going to talk a little bit about it in the leverage lane. So that'll be covered there.
All right, perfect. So if you guys want to talk about one and done and you have specific stuff, please, throw it in the chat. But one and done right now, Alex, is very specific. Like my dad and I are in a couple together. One of the Mayo one of the Ship It Nation ones. I got him those for Christmas. His text this morning was like, okay, I got a chance to min cash the Mayo Cup. I need a winner. I'm going to go with this guy, I think. Mm-hmm. And then his one about the Ship It Nation one was like, we're probably dead there. So just put whoever you want in. And I was like, we're definitely dead there, Dad. So, that's part of it. But any thoughts on one and done this week from a high level, just of the fact of like, obviously everybody's in a completely different position based on the spot this week.
Yeah, it's so hard to say and to give like, there's no like evergreen advice I can give at this point. You know where you stand. Make a pick that makes sense based on where you stand at this point in the season. I think you've heard us talk through like the way in which you should make one and done decisions enough. The one thing I will add is remember that we found a lot of success kind of gauging one and done ownership on course fit. People really like to lean into the course fit narrative of the week for their one and done selection, which makes me think that the popular guys this week are going to be guys who hit the ball far. And so this is a pretty good week probably to go with a Tommy, Hideki, Siwoo, Colin Morikawa, someone from that group instead of the obvious bombers.
Yeah, and I think it's like you said, there's a couple thoughts of if you're up top, obviously you can see who's in front of you. Like you're literally in the top 10 right now. You can see who's got what in front of you. And if you want to make your decision based off of that, like, okay, you've got Wyndham Clark and the guy in first has Wyndham Clark, but nobody else does. And you're like, well, he's probably going to use Wyndham Clark and I'm not good with second place. I want to play to win. That's how I think. That's my mindset here. I'm going for the gusto. Let's do it. Or you could say, you know what? It's Wyndham Clark week. Nobody has anybody good left. I feel like it's him. I'll take second if that hits. I'm not saying to me what I would do. I'm just noting for you, like everybody thinks differently. That's why it's hard for Alex and I to say like, you got to do this. But also I think if you're like top 50, top 100, too many people try and overthink it. It's like, just get the guy who you want to go down on, that you feel like as far like go down with, I should say, of like, you think about who you're going to actually put your money on and say, get me the best amount of money and score that you can, and I'll just take the results as they happen, because you don't want to play somebody just to, I overthought it, I ended up going with this thing because they said this. You drop back to like, one of the chalk pieces that everybody has left smashes, and you go from a really good spot or where you would have landed like top 10 and really good money versus dropping to like 300th now. And you're like, damn, everybody had this guy. I could have just played him and take what I got. It's kind of like late swapping on a Sunday in an NFL large, small tournament where you can kind of see some stuff, but you can't see it all. And there's people behind you with game stacks and people in front of you. It's like, yeah, you're probably not shipping it. Maybe you are, but you need to get whoever's going to get you the most points, because you still want the top possible score that you can get. When you're sitting second and you see what first has, that's when you can start to make some of those metagame and, okay, if this, then that, and here's what I'm up against. But it's tougher in one and done from that perspective. I don't have too much else to add. If you're completely out of it and you need to min cash, do not pick the most popular golfer of the week, probably, just because it depends on how close you are, but you're going to need an outlier to get there.
Yeah, as far as betting is concerned this week, there's one point I want to make about outrights this week that I think is an important one. The effect of the smaller field is pretty important. And so for some context, like last week, Siwoo Kim was second place. Data Golf had him estimated at plus 3.1 true strokes gained per round. So plus 3.1, second place. For some context, he gained 3.2 per round at the WM Phoenix Open, was tied for third. He gained 3.9 per round at the CJ Cup, was also second place. The point here is, when the field is this much smaller, there's just a chance that no one has that like run away from the field performance. Now, obviously Scottie did. Scottie gained over 5 strokes per round on the way to his win. But like, guys can be in contention without the crazy spike that in a given week and in like a major championship, especially, that it's required to actually put yourself in contention. And so one of the things that was very clear to me in the win odds of my model this week was there's a larger emphasis on contention performance score than usual. So the guys who are really popping in the outrights, the 2 outrights that I have this week, Rose and Michael Brennan, 2 of the strongest CPS in my database. And so that was just something I wanted to point to. And I think it's really interesting about like just the way that this tournament is likely to play out. Obviously it's possible, like these guys are really, really good. It's very possible that somebody here just boat races the field and nobody who is gaining 2.5 per round through 3 rounds is in contention. But it is possible that someone in that position is going to be in contention, plays their way into contention, on the back 9 on Sunday. And now it really just comes down to how well can you play when you're under that gun, and contention performance score has done a really good job of helping us in that way this year.
Yeah, I do like that call. So I will say just interesting, because Golf Prophet Brian, yeah, we like I said, I was just letting you know, I definitely appreciate your opinion, but he was thinking Decky's higher. And then Aaron seconded it. I would definitely take the under on 15, but I'm not the ownership guy. But everything you said about Siwoo there is like the starting point for me, first of all. But then second of all, it's really like the guys below him. I think Wyndham Clark gets steamed. And I think Victor Hovland and Goddard are already going to get some ownership, just based on bombers and different other factors. So it's like, I think Hideki comes in sub 15, but I'm not trying to like peg a number or say it's 12 or whatever. I just have a feeling that's going to be the case when it all shakes out.
Yeah, I don't really know. Like I said, I think 15 is a pretty good estimate because I very much like see the argument for it. His approach play's been on fire. He's driving the ball a lot better than he has. And if you just look at his finishes, 14th, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 7th, he's playing really, really good golf. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if Hideki's 20%, but I think the reason why he's projected where he is because when you look through like just the list of names near the top, you can make a case for all of them being really, really popular picks this week. So many of them are in great form. So many of them fit the bomber narrative. Like there are going to be plays that we think are really, really strong plays this week that slip through the cracks. And I just think Hideki seems like a candidate for one of those guys to slip through the cracks like that. But I also agree with them that like it feels low. Just looking at it, like given what he's done, given the fact that he's 9,000, all these other guys that we're kind of talking about are upper 9s or low 10s. It feels like he's low, but I just don't really see how he gets much higher than where he's projected.
That's what I'm waiting to see. I'd be very, very curious, but man, it's really tricky. Like Siwoo, got her up. Yeah. I guess like got her up's the bomber narrative. That's where that stems from too.
Yep.
So we'll have to wait and see. But as the Golf Prophet says and followed up with said, if that's the case, I'd be a really happy camper. And so would the Siwoo buyers if it ends up being Hideki that picks up the ownership and Siwoo doesn't. So like that's the nice thing about this. And our guy, Monday, who does the ownership, says Hideki's still going to come in around 14, 16 when it looks like at the finals. So that's the projection. We'll see what the final number is. And I'm always, for our crew and you and everybody doing ownership for a living. I just, I'm putting my intuition on it. And I've got the under even on 14. We'll see. Could be very wrong. And that's fine. It won't affect me too much, to be honest. That's not part of my super plan over here, I guess. But in general, we'll see how it shakes out. I will say the last thing that you said, that there was something else you mentioned that, Aaron had brought up. So you did address this. Alex addressed this already about a potential for the small sample with Brennan, but segueing into the betting breakdown and saying that you bet them both, or you would, like, it's like the Billy Horschel situation we talked about earlier this season. You are recognizing something that is a small sample, but just saying it's been good enough for me to see it. And again, more factors and more variables. It's the betting number that still is really solid and makes it worth it for me, because if the small sample is even wrong in just 0.5 this way, he's still in your stuff I'm still a better contention score than Mo. He could be cut in half and still be better than a lot of the field at that number. And so all of these factors matter for you when you're looking at your data and doing your analysis.
Yeah, I want to make 2 points on this. Number one, off the bat, yeah, you're right. It is a small sample still, but importantly, there's regression built in based on sample size. And so like he's let me find him. So he's at 1.23, which is insanely high. It's the highest number we've seen so far in any contention performance score for anybody. It's the first time I've seen anybody over 1.0. That can loosely be translated to like we can expect him to play 1.23 strokes above expectation per round when he's in contention. Part of that, though, is because his quote-unquote expectation is probably lower than what his baseline is going to be moving forward because he struggled for so much of the season. So I think that is probably the larger source of inflation, if you will, to his contention performance score and not sample size. It's also the fact that like it doesn't mean that that's where he's played so far. He's probably played something like 3 to 3.5 strokes above expectation, and it's just being regressed to this number. If you want to say it should be regressed further, sure. Like I'm not going to argue with that. I think the key isn't how good he's been in contention. It's the fact that he's very clearly someone who has a strongly positive contention performance score. What that exact number is less important to me. It's just like, it's directionally, he's really good when in contention. And then the second thing I'll say about this is let's also remember that the sample size is not 2 rounds. We're not just looking at how he's done on Sundays when in contention, in which case he's won both times. Actually, I think there was a third Sunday where he was in contention like the week prior, maybe. Let's see. Yeah, in Detroit, I think he might have been in contention at some point. But
he was. That was actually the one he hurt on because I had him in my lineup on the Sunday round for Fantasy Golf World Championship because of that. And it was like he was not good on that Sunday. He fell apart.
But we're also looking at Saturdays as well. And so the Saturday at the Wyndham, the Saturday at the Rocket was really, really good. And this is also a guy who won 3 times last year on the PGA Tour of America, on the Americas Tour. So this is a guy who's very comfortable kind of closing things out. And I wasn't so sure like how much I should care about that. Now he worth noting, like he played really well to get those wins. It wasn't like he had a 5-stroke lead and almost lost and held on to any of those. But Koivu, I thought, told us a pretty important story as well, where like he's another guy who's very accustomed to winning golf tournaments at the collegiate level, at the amateur level. He becomes a pro, gets into contention. And it was like very, very clear that he was leaning on those experiences and just kind of being familiar with those feelings, right? Because all of this, let's remember, it's about like how your mind works. Are you able to keep your mind present and in control? I can vouch personally for the fact that like you get some really weird feelings, like shivery type, tingly feelings throughout your body when you're in contention, you're standing over like a 4-foot putt. It's weird. And how well you handle those moments, like that's going to carry over no matter what tour it is, no matter what level of golf you're playing. When you get into a similar situation, even at the PGA Tour level, you might feel it like more intensely, but it's going to be something that you're familiar with. And so the fact that they've had those experiences very, very recently is probably a lot better than someone who hasn't been in contention for a long time. And, you know, they can't lean on a very recent experience to help them through the moment. So yeah, it's a small sample, but like it's not that small of a sample. And there's a lot of signal beyond just the contention performance score data that is pointing to Brennan being really good in those situations.
Yeah, I think you covered it well there, and I think that's the key that people have to remember when we're looking at all this data and going through it together. Anything else you have, Alex? Just when it comes, I'm just looking at some of these builds and whatnot. Anything else you have, or do you want to get straight to your leverage lane?
Yeah, let's go to leverage lane. I'm actually gonna, if you don't mind, I'll bring up my contest sim to share the screen real quick because there's a really cool kind of point that I want to make here. So can you see the screen?
Yeah, we got her.
Cool. So the first thing I've done is I preloaded a bomber lineup, so we can take a look at this lineup, and let me blow this up for everybody. And so one of the cool features of the sim is you can hover over the ROI and see how it sims under different circumstances. So when it's more powered by market derived projections like all matchup odds, top 10 odds, win odds, stuff like that, versus my specific projections. And then you can also see this high DD tilt and low DD tilt. So basically this is saying the more important driving distances, when it's like it's most important in the iterations of the sims, this lineup can be plus 79%. When it's least predictive, it's going to be down at plus 20%. The other thing that you can do here is you can hover over the lineup itself and get a similar type of ownership sensitivity for each player instead of the course fit sensitivity that we were just looking at. And so the point I want to make here, and the thing that's going to be my leverage lane this week, is notice how much more ownership sensitive in this sim Rory is than Goddard. In Rory's low third of ownerships, this lineup is plus 46% on average. When Rory is at his highest on average, in his highest third of ownerships, this lineup is plus 26% on average. Goddard, on the other hand, goes from plus 36.4 to plus 34.7. My leverage lane this week, because I am so much more uncertain of ownership than I am in most weeks, is I want to find guys who are less sensitive or who I'm really confident that they're coming in on the correct side of things. So like if I play Rory this week, it means I don't see a path to him being 10% owned. And I think there's a chance he's as low as like 5%, in which case maybe this 46% goes to like 80%, something powerful like that, right? Now, we don't need, I can come out of the screen share now. We don't need a contest sim to help us answer this question. So like one of the things here is just notice Goddard was between 17% and 27%. So in no outcome of his ownership is he likely to be low enough to be a true separator. Whereas when Rory drops under 10%, it's like major fire alarm, separation potential going off for him. So that's the first thing, is like, who has the potential to be a real separator? And then the second thing is, who has the like upper bounds of ownership? So earlier we were talking about guys like Siwoo Kim, Tom Kim, potentially having less steam potential because we know the field is going in on the distance narrative this week. So that's the way that I'm going to be building this week. Is I number one want to find the guys who I'm either really, really confident about their ownership, or I feel like I can handle the fact that like they're still going to be a good play even if they do steam. So every single player in my lineup, I want to either feel like they can't steam, or if they do, it's not going to change how much I like them and how well they fit the lineup. That's going to be my leverage line.
Yeah, I'm looking at mine. I think, man, this is a really tricky one, just thinking about how I'm going to play this. But I looked at it earlier. I think it's going to be, what's the best way to word this one? There's two ways I could word it, but I'm going to choose this one. I'm probably going to go with, I'm going to go with 3 8K guys in my lineup for the $200 single entry. So it's just a product of, like I said, I get everything will show that out, and you can look at different versions of it and all that. You can see it. Obviously, the lower Rory comes in, like you just showed in the Sims, that sort of setup with Scottie we talked about earlier. I think Scottie's going to steam, and I think one of the things that comes with that is I just don't see the like the Obergs and the Gotterups and guys like that, Clarks that I think I don't see them getting affected too much because of that. I see what happens is the 6K guys start to get more inflated. I know Minwoo is going to be off the charts. So it's like, I'm looking at a build when I can go 3 8K guys and I don't need any of those options in my lineup. And it becomes a product, what we talked about earlier. It's not just who you play, and you talk about this all the time, but it's who I'm not playing. And people are like, well, you still got all your guys at like 10 to 15%. But it's like, yeah, but I don't have Scottie. I don't have Rory. I'm just, throwing some of them out there. I don't have the low 6K chalk guys. I don't have the Minwoo play. Like once you nail that, like what is that? The 5 of the top 8 or something, like probably. So we'll just give you that as an example. And I'm not going completely off the wall. It's just, yeah, I mean, you're just math. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You're not getting Scottie in there that, at least to my knowledge, very easily. So when you go just Scottie, you've got like 7,100 left once you go 3. But that's to Aaron's point, and appreciate all the support and always engaging. That was the other way I was going to say it, but that's the worst way. It's like, oh, I'm just not playing Scottie in my main $200 single entry. I might have him somewhere else. So I'm not going to say it that way. So the $200 single entry that I'm talking about, that you can look it up and see if we say what we play, I will have 3 8K guys, and I got a pretty good idea of what I'm doing. So anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I've just got one question, because I think you said that really, really well. And it just made me think, like, if you are playing Scottie, if someone is dead set on playing Scottie, do you have an idea of how you'd play him?
That's a good question. I obviously haven't addressed it enough to like make it my top thought. I'm probably like borderline insane to most, but I'd maybe click Rory first before Scottie if I'm making a big decision this week, just because I always think it's hilarious when like there's no way one of the best players of all time can play good this week because he said he didn't practice a lot and played bad last week. Yeah, it might motivate him this week to get on his high horse and hop back in there and get it done. Whether or not it happens, because we just had our motivation rant, I don't know. But I guess like when I'm playing Scottie, I'm not going to want to look like you talk about this so well all the time. So I'll give my best examples. Like let's say the 44 milli, it's 567 people. Scottie will be popular there, but a lot of the Scottie builds are going to have at least 2 of Minwoo, Hogard, Rose, Scott, like you name it, of that grouping. So it's like, I don't want the 3v3 to that lineup. So I have to get a bit more aggressive, and I have to think about that. So maybe it's Scottie with the next tier up and play more down low if I like other guys in that bottom tier, because we all get the holes all week to play them, and those guys could come through. If I'm going the other way and saying like, man, if everyone's going to be playing Scottie with 2 6K guys at least, or I think that, how can I play Scottie with all 7K guys but leave Minwoo out? You know what I mean? Yeah. And do that approach, like things like that I can look at. That's how I would think about it.
Yeah, I think that's where I've landed too, because I was actually like struggling with this thought earlier when we were talking about like just the section of just like pivoting from the chalk build. My first thought was like, man, if you have Scottie, like there's so many guys down here that are 10% and are going to be 15 to 20% conditional ownership within Scottie lineups. It's like I just don't like anything down here. But I think you made a really good point, just kind of bringing up like it's also about who you're not playing, and just making us remember that. Because I think the way that I would do it is I'd say, if I'm playing Scottie, I'm not playing Thor Bjornsson, Minwoo, or Ben Griffin. And now I can play, Norin, Adam Scott, Michael Brennan, Højgaard, Woodland, Rayton, and like any of the guys that I do actually like down there. I don't have to be worried about the 15 to 20% conditional ownership, because I'm fading the guys who might be like 40% conditional ownership, like Minwoo, Lee, and Scottie lineup. So I think that's a really, really good call. And it's definitely something I'm going to be testing in the Sims tonight.
Yeah, I also think it's interesting just when people don't look at this enough, where it's like, oh, this lineup still has, such high ownership total overall or something. It's like, but you also have to remember, let's say you see like a lineup, and I don't use total ownership specifically, I'm just using this for a layman's term example to try and help. It's like people say like the Scottie version is 101%, but it has Minwoo and it has Højgaard and whatever. Let's say it has let's just use Højgaard and Rose, no Minwoo. Let's leave him out of this for a second. Let's just say they use the 2 6K guys that I think will be popular this week. Okay. It has 101. Let's just use a total, and I'm only using this for the example. But the point would be, is people will see like an 86 on a lineup that scores like 5 points less, that still has Højgaard and Rose, but it's a Rory lineup, and it doesn't have all that rest of the chalk up the middle. And they'll say like do I really want that? Like the ownership still seems high in both. You got to think now about your contest selection and where you and your lineup selection that you're playing it for. The 101 and the 88 are just examples to make it really easy. But I'm saying that 101 could be 130 in the 44 mega. And that 88 would probably subsequently be 65. Now that delta that you were like worried about a minute ago, so well, it's not that much of a difference. I guess I better just go with the Scottie lineup. It's 6 points better, and Scottie just won by a field goal and then some, or actually by a touchdown and then some last week. And then Rory sucks. There's no way he could be good. It's like people aren't considering that full thing. And on paper, even with good projections and player point projections, it might only be 6 to 7, 6 to 8 points less going in on a median. And if it just happens to be that that's what you need this week, it's like you actually have a big leg up. And even when people are like, well, damn it, I got Rose and Hogard right, but all the rest wrong, because of course you needed Rory and Siwoo or something like that. It's like, okay, yeah, Rory and Siwoo Kim played good golf in a 50-man field. You're shocked? Well, just, he played Rory was so bad last week. I just never thought he could come through. Boom, nailed it. There it is. So things like that are what people are not thinking about enough when they're looking at it. And I actually will use that because you're going to talk about Blick Analytics in a second for the Discord over there. Again, you can use promo code Tambo to check it out and get in 20% off. But I would say your part 2 of the roster construction, I only got through the TLDR. The best part that I read, which was hilarious, because it's like I've been saying this for years, it's literally where it's not who you play, it's how you play them stems from, was something along the lines of like, unfortunately, the contrarian players aren't going to be excited to hear this, but it's like it's going to be through different ways of playing chalk versus just completely fading chalk. Small sample of like not your stuff, of like the NFL seasons. We only get so many weeks. It's all condensed down. It's not like a baseball season with 162 games for every team and et cetera, et cetera. So it was like, yeah, you can play. People are like, oh, I can't believe the chalks every week in NFL. Oh, the chalk smashed again. No, you didn't have the 3% quarterback, the 2% defense, the tight end you had to pay up for that was only 5% while everybody had a mid-range tight end. Like you didn't do any of that stuff. You just happened to be in the same place. You played a 30% running back that got like 3 points or 5 points, and the wide receiver or the tight end for that team got 25. It's like you were in the right place, but the wrong pieces. You weren't playing the game necessarily. You were playing the plays and the picks and the popularity and all the P's that way, but it's about the process like we talk about. And that to me is the biggest thing that, you've got going on top of everything else. That's a huge standout for me of what you offer.
Yeah, it's been cool. So as you kind of just alluded to, all the NFL roster construction data has now been dropped into the Discord, and there were pretty clear findings, right? Like there are certain positions you want to pay up for chalk. There are certain positions where when you pay up, you want to be paying up for someone contrarian and a separator. There are certain positions where you want no part of cheap chalk. There's another position where you do want the cheap chalk. So very, very informative stuff. Really going to be helpful throughout the season. And the Sims products that are now on the site, I think are really, really cool and super powerful, super helpful. But last Sunday, it was the first time I put the round 4 contest sim on the site. Immediately win the ticket for the first time this year. So yeah, it's been great. And as we've talked about, prices are going to go up in September. So use this kind of opportunity now to get in at a lower price, get locked into that lower price, and you get the final 2 weeks of the PGA season. And use promo code Tambo for 20% off. And then for contest sims pricing, I should note, like it's free for the rest of the PGA season. It's not going to be free for the NFL season, but I think people are going to be very pleased with the progressive discounts the longer that you've been a subscriber. So it's not going to be cheap, especially when you're first in. But once you've been a subscriber for a while, I think it's going to be a really, really, really friendly price tag. Love to hear that. Yeah, like you said, if you guys need to get a foundation and more, but obviously we've reciprocated this partnership. So you can use code Blick or Blickle at dfsmastermind.com. If you don't know what it's about, you can just go to the landing page and read, but it talks specifically, very clear. DFS is how, not who. That's been my mantra forever. We're not chasing picks. We're looking at building your own process. You go down to join today. You can get this it's exclusive. It's only with code Blick that you can get this $10 off and get it for $37. It's a one-time payment for 7 hours of not commercial free football. It sounded like I was about to say that, but that's coming up soon. But 7 hours of not commercial free anymore, but yeah.
It's the top 20 questions that over 1,000 plus DFS players asked for answers to. And I broke it down in a complete mind map format of like topic, and pieces around it. You won't be disappointed. It'll be the best $37 you can spend if you use code Blick and get that. If you use code Blickle, you can either go $199 over 2 payments or $397 one time. Again, this is one time, but this is all those courses plus 60 plus hours. Alex and I have tons of courses in there. If you want a free version of one, you can go on the Ship It Nation channel right now under videos and see that. I've got 10 plus exclusive DFS Pro interviews breaking down their process behind the mind, how they think about everything. There's a premium podcast audio feed for both the courses and that. So on the road, at the gym, whatever you want to do with that. So code Blick for the modules, Blickle for the mastermind method. There's no subscription fees. There's no recurring. There's no nothing. You pay one time. This can really help with your foundation. We do some monthly live Q&A roundtables. There's a Discord, all of that. And then, of course, if you want to use that knowledge and that foundation to get in with Alex over at Blick Analytics, you can do so there. Lastly, for all the projections, ownership, this will be the last chance. By the way, this banner comes down. This price goes away next Tuesday. So just so you guys are aware, there's some changes, which we'll be bringing up on the Nation Communication for members next Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, behind the scenes. If you get in for the $49 at shipitnation.com right now and get SaberSim and get a month of all access, that will get you through the first week of NFL as well. So you can literally get your first month for $49, including the rest of golf, the MMA, the NBA, or the MLB, all that stuff as it's winding down with NASCAR, college football if you're eligible, and then the NFL stuff upcoming. But Alex, really fun season, my friend, breaking down all of this stuff with you. Any final comments from you on PGA Leverage Lane and then excitement for NFL Leverage Lane just around the corner?
I think anybody who has enjoyed listening to us talk about PGA will enjoy the NFL version of Leverage Lane even more, because with NFL, there's so many more ways to like really leverage roster construction more so than just who you're playing, right? So like we have opportunities in PGA, wave stacks, and finding the price point that's overlooked, but like there are a million other ways that we can do it in a more powerful way with NFL through game stacks, through very targeted leverage, what I've called correlated leverage for years, where like you're fading this guy specifically by playing the guy who's going to make that guy fail. So it's just, if you've enjoyed the concepts, if you've enjoyed the way we break down DFS and make it so that you're playing the game of DFS more so than you're just picking golfers, you're going to like that even more with NFL, because it's even more playing the game of DFS and less playing fantasy football when we get to that season.
Agreed. And we disagree a little bit more too, because there's like more things that we can go through and think about and ways to attack a slate. So again, fully focused on the process side more than like the picks and that, but it does come into play a little bit more too when we're saying like, if this, then that. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for some announcements upcoming. We appreciate you guys. It's been an amazing PGA season here on Leverage Lane. Leave us a comment below if you appreciate us. Make sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. These shows, the Leverage Lane ones, are free every week that we do them. So thank you guys for tuning in. For Alex, for myself, ToeTagginTambo, good luck in your contest this week, and let's ship it.